Okay, so just summarize, let's go over. Typically the lamas, that's how they teach. They'd present the topic, then they'd present it a second time slightly shorter, and then they present it a third time even shorter. So we'll just kind of mention the main points, and then we'll drill down on the different bits and pieces. And then again, from questions and answers, we're going to be, you know, we'll really drill down. We'll drill down from there. So you know how if we study the Lamrim, we see this Lamrim, this packaging of Buddha's teachings, we'll see that karma is the essence really of the first level of practice. It's the first, you know, the teachings and practices, as Lama Zopa would politely say it, you know, with his respect for the lineage, he would say the first part of the Lamrim is the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability. I mean, that's quite a mouthful, isn't it? Well, you know, I prefer to call it junior school. Somehow we kind of get it if we say that, isn't it? So the thing is, we hear different points, but it culminates, this whole point, this first section culminates in Buddha exhorting us to behave nicely, basically. Don't kill, don't steal, you know, but 10 little points. The first 7 are his exhorting us not to use our body and speech to harm sentient beings. You know, and the basic principle here, the basic reason, and this is the one that's the hardest for us to hear in our culture, that where we come from, you know, say, for example, the creator religions, where we know that God is the boss and God tells us not to kill and steal and lie and jump on the wrong partner, and if you do, you're naughty and you'll get punished. That's how we hear everything. That's how we hear it. Even in our mother's household, mummy will say, you know, don't do that. And we being naughty will say, why not? And we know very well her answer is the same as Jesus. It's because God said. It's because I said. That's how we hear morality. That's how we hear ethics. You've got to drive nicely, otherwise you'll get caught by the police and you'll get fined. So we always hear it in these dualistic terms of punishment and reward. But the Buddha has no view like that, and that's really quite hard for us to hear. On the face of it, you know, it doesn't state this too much. In the Buddha's teachings, if you're in Tibet, they don't go on about it not being a creator, because they never thought of a creator in the first place. But we need to constantly hear that, and therefore to try and go against this, you know, the philosophical and psychological implication of a creator is that he's the boss, and therefore, as always I quote my Catholic priest friend said when I asked him, what defines a sin is doing what God said not to do. But that's not the Buddha. The reason he says don't kill is not because he said so, and so on and so forth. So the essence of the first point is Buddha's marvelous view that underpins his entire worldview, his entire view of the universe, is this view of cause and effect. It's the law that runs the universe. It's the law within which the universe runs, and it's a natural law. I can't stress this enough, and we have to really think this through. We're so used to God's law, you know. No such thing. Of course, there are laws of Buddha at another level, but at the big level of in terms of the natural things, as far as Buddha's concerned, it's a natural law that whatever any being, monkeys and dogs and ants and humans, whatever we think and do and say, is just naturally this process of quote unquote creating karma, which means doing actions. Starting with the mind, intention, I will, volition, that's every millisecond, driving whatever we there think and do and say. And that's the process, this natural process of cause and effect. And because whatever we think and do and say sows seeds in the mind, programs our mind, that just necessarily produces the person we become. This is Buddha's deal. As His Holiness calls it, self-creation. So it's really huge if we think of it like this. But it takes us time, because we hear it in this narrow, moralistic, kind of naughty kind of view, which is very, very stupid, very, very childish. There's no creator, there's no punisher, there's no rewarder. We're the boss, Buddha says. And this is the most shocking point, and this really takes us a while to think about. But that's the essence of the view of karma. So if whatever we think and do and say produces the person we become, and if we know we want to be happy and don't want to suffer, well then clearly, logically, it follows we better learn this ridiculous law, had we not. If you want flowers in your garden, you better learn botany, baby. If you want to get money in the bank, you better learn mathematics. It's just sort of logical, it's simple, it's uncomplicated, and we live our lives like this, the materialist world, you know. We're brilliant at knowing the laws of cause and effect. Botany, you know, gravity, mathematics, engineering, architecture, you name it, music, they're all the laws of cause and effect, such that you follow those rules, you'll end up with that product, you'll end up being that person. Well, that's Buddha's deal. So simple, and we should be delighted to hear this, but we hear it with so much emotion and so much neuroses, so much guilt and blame and punishment. I mean, we dump that onto it. It doesn't exist in the law of karma. We dump that meaning onto it. We should be so happy to know that we're in charge of our own lives. We should be so happy to know that we can produce our own future. I mean, this is miraculous to think this way. But we don't. We think it's up to somebody else. There's some conspiracy theory out there that there's someone's behind it pulling all the strings, I'm not trying to be rude about if you have faith in Creator. No such view like that in Buddhism. It's very powerful. It's actually very liberating. It's not heavy, but that's how we hear it. Oh, you mean I'm the blame? This is the first thing we say. Oh, you mean that little girl who bad things happened to her, you mean she caused it? This is all we hear, It's so fascinating. I've never ever had a person yet ask me the question, you mean that little girl has got a beautiful mummy and a beautiful daddy and money in the bank and food in the fridge and is treated beautifully? You mean she deserves it? Nobody ever asked me that question. But that's how we only think of it in terms of the naughty things, because that's our demented, ridiculous mind. Ego is addicted to misery. It's kind of the irony, In other words, it's sort of like you only think there are causes for the weeds in the garden. Why are there weeds in my garden? But no one ever worries if there's flowers. You just think you take them for granted. It shows how idiotic we are, and this leads us to understanding emptiness. It's very, very fascinating. So that's the general thing to get. That's just sort of the energy behind the law of karma. And then, of course, there are the details, and that's what we have to learn. So I'm sure we did, as Kerry very, pointed out. There's various fundamental points about it. Of course, it's much more extensive and vast, and as we continue to study and practice on the path and study the text, we'll learn much more detail about the intricacies of this law. Because it's coming not from revelation or on high. It's coming from the experience of the great meditators, right back to the Buddha, who've seen the truth of it. So the basic principle, the one way of framing this entire law is in terms of happiness and suffering. I mean, it's the law of cause and effect, not in terms of getting flowers or money, but getting happiness and stop getting suffering. And this is very interesting. It sounds almost pretty simplistic, but it's quite profound. One way of framing the whole of Buddha's path is in terms of its being a path of how to stop suffering and how to get happy. Now, it's also a method. It's also Buddha's path, and this is utterly linked to it, a path of how to stop ignorance and get wisdom. We mightn't be so sure we want wisdom. We all know we want happiness, but they come to the same thing. So, as Kerry mentioned, we discussed that there are basically four ways in which our karma ripens, 4 ways in which the seeds that we plant in our mind, based on everything we think and do and say every millisecond, will produce fruits in the future. 4 ways of that they will ripen. One is a type of rebirth. One is these, and then the other 3 play out within that rebirth. So here we are with a human body, and that's the fruit of virtue. Okay, the next level of the general principle is that everything you think and do and say produces your future. The next level of detail is that everything you do that's called negative produces your suffering future, and everything that's positive produces your happy future. I mean, it's pretty straightforward words, not complicated. So if this is true, we had better learn to distinguish between negative and positive. I mean, it's pretty obvious. This is Buddha's analysis. So that's the discussion let's go into more detail here about. Let's do that. That involves the mind, of course. So that's what we learn. This is now, so karma's in the first level of practice, the least capability, so, junior school as I call it. But the next level is where we learn about the mind. So let's go to that and look at the way we can define, the way we can identify the states of mind that are labeled negative in Buddhism and distinguish them from what's labeled positive. These words almost seem too simplistic for us. They seem rather moralistic. We don't like this in modern psychology. But this is Buddha's view. This is Buddha's approach. And these are quite specific definitions to these terms, So a negative state of mind, which is the state of mind that drives our body and speech to do an action that's labeled negative, that sows a negative seed in our bank vault that eventually will ripen as future suffering. We need to understand this way of categorizing, isn't it? It's quite simple. It's not complicated, just that we hear it so wrongly. So a negative action, and that's what we're dealing with first in the beginnings of karma. We just learn to look at the actions of the body and speech, not discussing the mind yet, So that's why Buddha exhorts us to simply don't kill, don't steal, or take the ungiven, as Lama Zopa calls stealing. I think that's how they say it in Tibetan. Very direct. Don't take the ungiven. And then the third one is don't jump on the wrong partner, sexual partner. You know, that means like if you're committed to a person, you don't cheat on that person. And you don't cheat on somebody else's. Don't take somebody else's. So that's the three simple ways of defining the three actions of the body that are labeled negative, which usually are actions we do that are driven by one of the delusions. Simply speaking, the two main delusions, attachment and aversion. I mean, you jump on the wrong partner because you're attached. You kill somebody because you're angry. I mean, okay, you might kill somebody if you're a fisherman. That's out of attachment, not anger. Fishermen don't hate fish, but due to a habit of killing based on attachment. So attachment and anger, the three poisons, as we learn in high school in the mind, when we learn about the model of the mind for the Buddha. So here he describes all the states of mind we have, the thousands and thousands of states of mind, are all categorized into those that are negative, positive, and neutral. I mean, it seems almost too simple for words, doesn't it? There's no model of psychology that says negative, positive, and neutral states of mind with no fourth category. Neuroscience does not talk like that. Psychiatry does not talk like that. Psychology does not talk like that. Buddha does. So negative state of mind is a neurotic, deluded state of mind that's driven by the root delusion. He talks about the three poisons, the three toxic emotions, but they're all kind of, all the thousands of neurotic states of mind are all come down to these three, subsumed to these three, which is very helpful. So the root delusion, and we must have mentioned this last week because Kerry mentioned we discussed dependent arising, because all this is where we finally get to in the Lamrim. When we get to the six perfections, we finally get to uproot the root delusion. But here let's discuss it in the high school context, the middle scope. The three poisons, the three toxic emotions. The first one, the root one, is primordially deep. So primordially deep we can't even recognize it. All we can do is see the symptoms of it if we really look deeply. And it's a misconception. This is the interesting point about when we study the model of the mind, that all the neurotic states of mind are the emotions. We talk about the feelings, the emotions of anger, the emotions of attachment, the emotions of jealousy. They're all driven by conceptual stories that are misconceptions, and the attachment and anger are the two main ones that are driven by the root one, which is the misconception of that called simply ignorance, that believes in an intrinsic me. Of course, it's so subtle, it's so primordial, it's so ancient, this assumption, this misconception. It's absolutely at the level of assumption. And when we hear that we believe in an intrinsic me, it just sounds like some cosmic nonsense. You know, what are you talking about? I mean, to even think that there's anything other than a me is in the first place is ridiculous for us. We're not even going to get to that one yet. That comes later. But it's two main voices, and its first main voice is attachment. As far as Buddha is concerned in the Four Noble Truths, attachment is the main cause of suffering in daily life. Big surprise to us. So attachment is that, and it's this junkie in us that craves and desperate to get what it wants every millisecond, and the millisecond it doesn't get what it wants, that's the arising of these third poison, which is called aversion. And it's got a whole spectrum of responses: anger, annoyed, irritated, frustrated, despair, depression. There's a whole spectrum. We run between these two 1,000 times a day. And then all the branch delusions come from these. And as you know, if you study the text called Lorig in the centers and the monasteries, which is the text that covers all these states of mind in great detail. But these are the three, the summary, you know. So the actions we do with our body and speech, which are what a Buddha exhorts us not to do in the first level of practice, don't kill. Usually that's, you know, the heaviest level of that. That's the heaviest one. You can see that, can't you, in the world? It's always the heaviest one, killing. Just hearing that word even. One Lama, he was asked if he wanted to give one piece of advice to anybody. Don't kill, he said. That's the first one. At least that. Because that's the heaviest action to do with our body, driven by the heaviest delusion, which is usually anger. Sometimes can be attachment, like the fisherman, that's attachment. But the anger is the heaviest one, so it brings the heaviest result, causes the heaviest of suffering, and leaves the heaviest of imprints in the mind. It's sort of logical if we think about it. So the first thing is, Buddha says, don't kill, honey. He doesn't say don't stop being angry yet. That's too advanced. That we wait to get to high school for that. Just don't kill. Then don't take the ungiven. This is usually driven by attachment, can be driven by anger. And don't jump on the wrong partner. basically, simply speaking. It's more nuanced than that and more detailed in the text, but that's good enough here. And that's for sure based on attachment, you know. But isn't it interesting when His Holiness gives the vow not to kill, no sexual misconduct when he's in Dharamsala, when he gives it to public, very big groups, especially modern people, Westerners. He'll say don't rape. It's curious why wonder why Buddha doesn't say don't rape, you know. It says don't cheat on a partner, don't have other sexual misconduct. It's very curious they don't mention don't rape. It's very curious that, isn't it? Maybe they didn't rape much then, but I'm sure that's normal. Humans have been humans since beginningless time. Or put it this way, men have been men since beginningless time. Sorry, boys. Girls usually don't rape. It's usually the boys who rape. We know that, and we've all been boys in countless lives, so it's not personal, okay? Anyway, here it's usually that one, but His Holiness always says don't rape, which is an interesting point. Don't misuse your body. And that's not based on attachment. There's attachment, but usually based on anger as well. Think about it. It's violence, isn't it? Rape is violence, you know. That's anger, isn't it? It's pretty clear. Okay, so the karmic consequences of those actions, for example, just the first three. And remember we looked at the Four Noble Truths and we mentioned the first Noble Truth, and the first Noble Truth is there is suffering. And there's 3 levels of suffering, and the first suffering is called the suffering of suffering, which is the grossest level. So in terms of this life, the suffering of past killing would be to get killed or to die young. That's the third type of result, which is called experiences similar to the cause. There's 4 types of results. Remember the rebirth? Then within this rebirth, we have the other 3. Our own mental tendencies, the things that happen to us, and even the environmental result, the way the physical world impacts upon us. So killing, for example, we've got a rebirth of a human due to non-killing. Specifically, the virtue of non-killing is why we've got a human body. Second, within this life, though, look at the tragedy. And I think I mentioned the fisherman last year. This is just a good example of why we did mention this. Here we are, got human body. We got a human body. We like won the lottery. It's not the lottery really, but it's like that. It's so rare. If you count the, just 7. Even as I might have said, even in Leeds, you're going to have probably 7 billion mosquitoes in one backyard in one evening. In the summer, perhaps. So clearly, it's harder to get a human body. So it's logical if we think that way. There are trillions of just the animals. Forget the other beings that are the result of non-killing and of killing and other actions of harming sentient beings. That's what gives a lower rebirth. So we've got the human birth, won the lottery, as a result of non-killing. But the tragedy, and I think, I don't know if we went into this detail. Did we mention vows last week as well, Kerry? Are you there still? Did we mention vows last week?
Yeah, a little bit, but you can do more about purification.
That's the thing. Purification. Okay, purification and vows is where I wanted to go to this today, because this is the point now. If we can understand that the first result for us of non-killing is amazing, is getting a human body. At least getting a human body of all the different realms. It's the best of a bad lot, because at least we've got enough intelligence, if we're fortunate to access it, so that we can learn to get the hell out of the misery. Use our common sense, use our intelligence to want to practice, and to be able to practice good ethics, to choose that, to have the miracle of choice. But look at the humans. It's as if we haven't got choice, isn't it? It's so tragic. So the thing is, we've got the human body, but look at all the millions of humans. Look at billions of humans who just naturally kill. This is the most tragic one, because the habits, a person who gets a human body due to non-killing, they've been in the lower realms in the past, let's say. They've finished the killing karma. They've exhausted the petrol tank of the main result of killing, which is about being born in the lower realms. And like a miracle, one life or other, they sort of, due to certain conditions, ripening. Maybe, somebody said a mantra in your ear before you died as a pussycat or something, and that triggered your human karma to then be triggered, the seed to be triggered, and the next life you'd be born as a human. Now, lots of humans have come from the lower realms recently. So they've finished the karma of non-killing, the main result of killing, the main result, which is the type of rebirth of non-killing, of killing in past lives. That's finished. And then you get a human. But unfortunately, and look at the evidence, I would say the vast majority of human beings kill. And why is that? Because they haven't exhausted all karmic results of killing. They've been in the lower realms, that's finished, but they've got the residual results of the killing that then play out in this precious human birth. They continue to kill, or and or they get killed or die young, and or they have a lousy environment. The karmic results of killing in terms of the environment is that the very physical world itself, the four elements, food, air, water, harm you instead of helping you. You have allergies, you get very sick, you're always weak, things always go wrong with your health. You know, you get the water's polluted, the air's polluted, the food has got no nourishment, nothing grows properly. They are the environmental results of past killing. The experience similar to the cause result of past killing is you get killed or you die young. Now look at the world, please. Just these two alone. Look at the world. Look at the suffering. Look at COVID-19 right now. This is the karmic result, the collective result of the millions of humans being affected in one way or other, either as an experience similar to the cause of past killing, where they've died young. Look at all the people who've died young. Or the karmic or the environmental result is getting sick, or having the physical world itself harm you. And that includes these days our own family. Other human beings are like poison for us, you know. So that's the environmental result of past killing. Collectively, the millions of humans on this planet are experiencing it now. Now, look, what about the people who aren't? There are some people who are not having any sickness, who have not been touched by COVID-19. The environment still is delicious for them, and they're all still fat and healthy, and no one's killing them, and they're not dead yet. Well, that's because of their non-killing karma. And why you've got that in this life, if you've got the karma to, especially the first one, to not kill, which is a rare, rare thing on this planet. Think about it. Okay, we were born, I mean, I was born as a Catholic. I don't think I had any wish to kill. But you just did if there was an ant there, you know, you might have killed it. You didn't think about it much. But I mean, I remember my father used to go fishing. I never arose him. I see these fishing rods. It didn't even arise in my mind as an option. I didn't think, will I go fishing? No, no, no. I didn't think, oh, he's bad going fishing. I just didn't put the two and two together. But it never arose in my mind. So lots of us must be the same. That is because we must have practiced non-killing in the past in terms of a spiritual practice. Not just that, as Lama Zopa says, we must have been living in vows of non-killing. This is the miracle. This is why today we're going to go into vows and purification. So this is the very first level of practice in junior school, in the first level of the Lamrim. Not just to be a nice person. Lama Zopa says being good, being nice, just being a good person isn't enough. There's something so specific psychologically about living in vows, number one, and number two, the purification practice every day, which Lama Zopa says we're insane not to do every day. These are the two tools we need to use, you know, and we must logically have used these in the past, which is why it doesn't even arise in our mind to kill, or why conditions never come that we demand that we kill, you know. This is because we must have lived in vows. That's why even some people actually, even since they're tiny children, have no thought to kill. I always tell the story of the two examples, the two little boys. I always tell this story. Two little boys. One, the little boy who, as soon as he saw fishing, I'm sure I mentioned this, who as soon as he saw fishing, he fell in love with fishing and he became a professional fisherman for the rest of his life. Another little boy, the son of my friend in Queensland, Deichen, when he was about 3, he's like 40-something now, more. When he was about 3, she was taking the lice out of his head, and he was in tears for the lice, crying for the lice. Mummy, mummy, don't hurt them, it's their home. I mean, nobody taught her that. Nobody taught him, and nobody taught the little fisherman boy. Because one, he'd been in the lower realms in the past. He'd completed the main result of killing. He gets a human body like a miracle and gets a really good human life with a nice mummy in California with good environmental karma, good experiences similar to the cause, good tendencies. He was generous, he was kind, but one of his tendencies was to kill, and he killed fish. And in a way that's tragic, because in our culture we accept fishing as something kind of benign and friendly. These days more and more people don't like it. I mean, imagine if he had the karma to kill poodles. He would have been put on death row, because we happen to be attached to poodles, but we don't attach to our little fishies, you know. We like to eat them. Imagine if you wanted to catch poodles to eat them for lunch. You'd be called psychotic. You'd be thrown into a mental institution. Think about it. But there's not a fraction of logic to that. It's because of our attachment, you know. So the tragedy was, because he wasn't attached to killing poodles, he was attached to killing fish, but he was praised for it. People think fishing is wonderful. It's nature, it's quiet, and I'll tell you why. Fish die with a fish don't make a noise when they die. the poodle would squeal and kick and blood would spurt out. But fish, poor little things, all they've got no legs, no arms, no voice. The best they can do is wriggle their body. And this is the Maggie laughs all the time, I'm noticing. I'm glad we laugh. If we didn't, we'd cry, wouldn't we, Maggie? But think about it. Think about it, you know. These little fishies. And there's this nice boy, kind boy. He didn't put a hook in his mother's mouth. He didn't kill his mum. Didn't want to eat his mum for lunch. But these fish, due to past karma. So, and this is the tragedy with attachment. This is where killing with attachment is like a honey-covered razor blade. It looks benign, you know. He didn't bash the fish to death. They died quietly in his boat. And this is the point. This is the tragedy. He died when he also had the third result of, I always mention this story. It's such a good example. He had the third result of killing, which is the experience similar to the cause. He died young, and he died scuba diving. He died because fishermen love the fish. They don't hate fish. They love them. Or attached to them, really. So he died in the water scuba diving. So he had the karmic result of past killing. He died young. He might have been eaten by the fish. Who knows, you know. 2, he had the tendency. And now the point is the tendency to do the negative action is the worst karma. And that we have to understand the logic of that. So in this case, you can see the suffering of attachment is what I'm pointing out. This boy, a lovely boy, went fishing every day. It was his profession. Attached to fishing. Thought about it all the time. It was his whole life. It drove his whole life. And when he was in the boat, he'd catch the fish. And then probably the fish were there dying slowly. I know I might have mentioned when my Lithuanian uncle, Stasis, my auntie Robina Bliss married him and she became Robina Arkashauskas. We thought Bliss was a silly name anyway, but it was my mother's name, you know. Agnes, she was Agnes Bliss and my auntie was Robina. So anyway, poor Nin, we called her Ninny. I don't know why. Ninny, I don't know why. Anyway, poor Ninny had to, you know, Stasis, he was a Lithuanian peasant. I mean, a nice man. Well, he was a Nazi, actually, but never mind. Australians let the Nazis in after the war. This is not funny now. This is funny. It is funny. But you know how we Australians wanted all the Poms to come in, right? All you white people with blue eyes and pale skin. You Poms are especially good because you never have any sun. So all you Poms, the poor Australians had this enormous piece of land that they had taken from the Aboriginals, as you know, these rude English people. And in the 1920s, they were desperate for more people because they were trying to grow the country. It's enormous. It's bigger than the United States. And, you know, they're knocking off all the Aboriginals and needed more white people. So they kind of try to seduce you English people to come. They'd offer you a couple of 100 acres of land. And then you got there, it was desert. So you all went back very disappointed. So eventually, after the war, so before the war, they started, about the time of the war, I think, they were really desperate for more people. But they had a white Australia policy. Honestly, it was in the documents, a white Australia policy. They called it that. And so they really had to lower, they had enough, couldn't get enough English. You guys didn't want to come, you know. So they started after the war trying to get and this is not joking, it's policy. They wanted to get the Eastern Europeans with blue eyes. So they were the Nazis, weren't they? And then eventually they let the Italians and the Greeks in, the brown ones. And by the 70s, the Chinese were coming in and the Vietnamese. And by that time, they'd lost the plot, you know. I'm not joking. But Australia's got such a good reputation, they got away with it. I mean, but they were as bad as South Africa, you know. Anyway, you Poms, you're all the blame. All you working class Poms who were sent there because you were naughty, wasn't it, you know. But I think, anyway, I'm just making stupid jokes here. What was I talking about? What was I talking about? God almighty. Oh, yeah, my uncle, Stasis. Stasi, we called him. He married my auntie Robina, I told you. And he killed the fish. He bought a piece. Did I tell you about this last week or not, Kerry? Okay, I tell some people. Anyway, I remember they moved into the country, right on the river, on the Murray River between New South Wales and Victoria, because he wanted to be in the country. He had acres of vegetables, and then he would kill the quails in the quail season, the ducks in the duck season, the chickens in the chicken season, the snakes. No, the eels in the eel season, the fish in the fish season. He was really good at all this. And I always remember he'd come back with we'd go there for swimming, right? I didn't know about fishing. And he'd come back and he'd always get drunk and come back with this big bag of fish, and he'd chuck it on the ground in the 100 degrees heat while I'm sunbaking, you know. And I'd go, Stasi, they're still alive. And I didn't know how fish died. I had no idea. And then all the fish, he said, yeah, that's how they die. So fish die the most agonizing death. And so one of the things about karma, which I haven't really gone into, is the way the being dies that you kill. So even though fishing looks benign, he wasn't angry. He didn't want to harm the fish, but out of unbelievable ignorance because of attachment. And this is why that boy on the boat, seeing those fish wriggling their bodies, he never saw suffering. His mother went fishing one time with him. She never liked to go. And she could see directly what was going on. She could see directly that the fish were suffering. Because why? Because she didn't have attachment for killing in her mind. So his attachment literally, and this is how attachment functions, this is how all the delusions function, they literally blind us from seeing reality. He saw his own fantasy. He projected his own fantasy of seeing it as lovely. This is fishing, the water, the nature. He saw the fish every day. You see those videos of big fishermen in their big boats and the crabs or the lobsters. You see them, and they're nice human beings. They don't mean to their wives. But how they can see these creatures with the lobsters trying to get out. They can see the fish wriggling their bodies, but they don't interpret it as suffering. And that's the suffering of attachment. When attachment's in your mind, you're as blind as a bat. You just see your own projections. This is the terrible tragedy of actions done on the basis of attachment. Anger's fairly evident, you know. So all these years he was, this boy, killing fish, hundreds of thousands of them. And then he dies young. He probably gets eaten by the fish in the water, you know. So, and I told you, I'm sure I mentioned this, it's always such a stark example. The mother heard Lama Zopa in Kopan years later. It was 5 years after the son died, and the mother was in Kopan Monastery. She came and she came to my room crying. She'd been in the teachings from Lama Zopa hearing about karma, and she was in tears saying, where's my son being reborn? You know, she'd never thought of this. So I said, darling, I don't know. We'll go and see Geshe Lama Kontrog, this amazing yogi who lived up in the mountains, naked, no food, no sleep, living in Vajrayogini's Pure Land, as Lama Zopa said. He was totally clairvoyant. And they don't tell you what they see, these lamas. I've told this story so many times, it's countless, but you might not have heard it. So she said, where's my son being reborn? And he even called himself Salmon. Sal for short. This is what attachment does. Attachment makes fantasies. We live our lives in creating fantasies. You've got to admit that's so fascinating. And that's exactly what he did with fishing. And fantasy, lived in this fantasy land that he made up. Even called himself Sal. Sal for short from salmon. So she told him his name, his proper name, and Geshe Lama Kontrog, being clairvoyant, he's a holy being, not just having clairvoyance, but also emptiness and bodhicitta, all these amazing realizations. He can access immediately his mind just by hearing that name. He knows exactly where that boy is. He said, ah, yes. First, he was born in the animal realms, and now he's in the hell realms. And she went, oh no, what can I do for him? And Geshe Lama Kontrog kind of laughed sadly, and he said, what do you mean for him? He said, for everybody. Now, I met this woman years later. She's not a Buddhist, but she was very moved by that. This compassion, you know, it was very interesting story that the lamas rarely tell you what they see, you know. I mean, one student friend of mine asked Lama Zopa, is my mother in the lower realms? He said, yep. I mean, they don't often tell you, I say to you. So if you can get compassion from it and renunciation, that's the reason, that's the point. So anyway, the actions of harming others driven by anger are fairly evident, you know. It's kind of brutal and bloody, isn't it? But actions of harming others based on attachment, they're really hard to see. You know, and the attachment blinds our minds. This is the tragedy. This is the suffering. So living in vows, if we see our minds and if we see in most of our lives, we've never needed to choose not to kill because we just don't even meet the situation to kill. That means we've lived in vows. And when we first heard the Buddha's teachings and it became easy for us to say, of course I'll take a vow never to kill. And we really intentionally mean it never to kill. And it comes easily to us. And it's never a dilemma. That's because we lived in vows not to kill in the past. And because we have purified the tendencies to kill. So this is the thing. Let's talk about these. The vows is amazing. You know, the vows is stupendous. We can really understand psychologically the benefits of them. Buddha loves his vows. And the way, as you know, all the Tibetan lamas would say, you know, that if we living in vows, keeping our vows, and as they call them, our pledges, our words of honor, purely, is the quickest way to get enlightened. So we've got to think about this, understand it. So what even is a vow? As soon as we hear the word vow, we kind of panic, someone's squashing us down and telling us not to do something, isn't it? But they're so neurotic thinking that way. If you think about it, I always say this example, think about it. When you decide to learn to drive a car, if you had to write down every tiny thing that you vowed not to do just to drive a car, it would be hundreds. Think about it. And you don't say, what do you mean I shouldn't turn left if I want to turn right? What do you mean if I should? What do you mean I'm not allowed to put my foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake? You don't say that because it's common sense, for God's sake. Well, so what is the reason for not doing this and not doing that, not to mention the road rules? Why? So you can turn yourself into a good car driver. It's pretty logical, and we get it, and we don't have a panic attack. We don't get nervous learning all these things and then internalizing them. But we get really upset, even the thought of 5 little baby vows. Like someone's being, because we think of it as morality, as moralistic, as punishment. I'm naughty, like squashing yourself. We're like infants, because we don't understand karma. And the logic of karma, like I said, is that we produce ourselves. You produce the car driver. You produce the musician. You produce the mechanic. You produce the mathematician. So obviously every thought, every word, and every action counts. It's so reasonable. So what are we trying to produce here? A happy human being, for goodness sake. This is Buddha's method for how to become happy. As simple as that. Forget about compassion yet. Don't be so grand. One step at a time, Turn yourself into a nice person first. Then you can afford to know how to turn other people, how to help other people turn themselves into nice people. That's what morality means. So vows are stupendous. I think even Tsongkhapa says that they're like subtle physical energies that are visible to clairvoyance, So vows, you can have your own personal vows. You can say that, I will never this, I will never that. But here we're talking specifically about the Buddhist vows. There's 3 levels of vows. The first kind are related to the first levels of practice. The Hinayana level, the wisdom wing, first and second scopes, junior school and high school. These are called the vows of individual liberation, prati moksha. I don't know Sanskrit, but that's what it means. Individual liberation, your liberation. So if you're on the Hinayana path, this is as far as you'd go. You'd live in these vows, you'd then get some samadhi, and then you'd realize emptiness, and then you'd achieve your own nirvana, and then you wouldn't come back. So these are the vows that you need to keep, and the level of these vows are the most basic, and they're the strictest. There's no wriggle room. And once you've taken refuge formally, you then would take these 5 or more or less of these vows. And these are specifically a decision. A vow is a decision to refrain from something. You vow never to put your foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake. And you just learn that so completely that you just never do it, unless you have a panic attack, in a crash. That's what a vow is, and you internalize it until it becomes natural. And vow is a decision is to refrain from something. So this whole level of morality here, and even in the first stages of the Bodhisattva path, which has the second level of vows, the vows of a Bodhisattva, which are much more expansive and more marvelous, and we'll discuss this. But this first level, this is the level of the morality or the ethics of restraint, the actions of not harming others. This is the first level of the practice of ethics and morality in Buddhism. And it's an obvious, crucial first level. How can you possibly run around benefiting others if you don't even know how to stop harming them because your body and speech and mind are out of control? You do very little good at all. In fact, you do mostly damage. So the very first level is to harness our own energy, first of all verbal and physical, the servants of our mind, control them and stop them from harming others. So the very first entry into Buddhism isn't even the 5 vows. You don't quite take refuge in the beginning until you feel comfortable, but at least you've got this list of the 10 non-virtues, as they say, the 10 little don'ts. The first 3, and they're not vows yet, they're just guidelines from the Buddha. They're recommendations from the Buddha. He exhorts us to consider to not kill, not jump on the wrong partner, and not take the ungiven, 3 of the body. Then he exhorts us to refrain from 4 of the speech. And that for us humans, the vast majority of us, like here now, we probably don't rape and kill and steal too much, but we certainly badmouth behind backs, one of our most favourite activities. We use abusive language to people's faces. We lie, and we just rabbit on about nothing. These 4 actions of the speech. At least he exhorts us to control these 4. Because these 7 actions, 3 of body and 4 of speech, are all actions that are obviously ones that harm others. This is the first level of the ethics in Buddhism. The heaviest level is actions that harm others. All actions that are negative harm us. But the heaviest ones are the ones that also harm others, which is the very first level Buddha exhorts us to refrain from. You know, he doesn't say, his 10 non-virtues don't include don't eat too much cake, don't things like that, because they're things that only harm you. At least he gets us to refrain from harming others, because they leave the heaviest karmic results, heaviest seeds, and bring the heaviest karmic results. So it's logical if we analyze it like this. And remember, the reason Buddha exhorts us not to kill is here how he defines the negative action is in terms of its harming others. That's clear. But why he exhorts us not to do it at this level of practice is because, guess what, honey child Robina? That action leaves a seed in your mind that programs you in killing and ripens as you're getting born in the lower realms, you're continuing to kill, you're getting killed, and the environment harming you. The 4 karmic results. So, Robina, would you like that suffering? No, thank you. Well, then, honey child, here's my recommendation. Here's my advice. That's the approach. So that's the general first approach. Then you listen to Buddha's teachings and you decide maybe you like the Buddha's teachings and you want to commit yourself. So you would then formally take refuge. You'd formally commit yourself to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha in a formal ceremony in front of somebody who has received it from a previous person, who's received it from a previous person, who in an unbroken chain of humans can be tracked back to the Buddha himself. You kind of plug into this power source, and then, and that person becomes one of your teachers because they're representing the Buddha for you. And then in the same ceremony, or maybe another day, you would then take the 5 or less of these layperson's vows, these prati moksha vows. So the vows of a monk and a nun are at the same level, except we have more, that's all. So vows are important, so unbelievably important. The way Lama Zopa says, which is just quoting Buddha's teachings, and there's logic to it if we think about it, if we listen to it carefully, there's logic to it. Right now, in this moment, most of us sitting here in our little room, wherever we are, we're not killing anything, okay? We're not killing anything. We're not killing, which is fantastic. Lucky rats and roaches can live in peace because we're not killing them. Happy for them. But listen to this. Your mind is not involved in that action, is it? You're not thinking at this second, I must not kill. Why? Because there's no creature in front of you that you have to think of not killing. So therefore, as long as we're sitting here very nicely, and why we're sitting here nicely, and why we're not being threatened by creatures, like if you're living in India, it's like living in Jurassic Park, I promise. In the rainy season, they bombard you, these creatures. You've got to be thinking every second, I must not kill, I must not kill. Because you're living in these crazy creatures. I remember in a hotel in Varanasi, my first time there, in the rainy season, and I had a glass door, and as the sun came down, it was like birds. Hemingway. It was like Jurassic Park. Beings attacking you, you know. I mean, you've got no choice there. I mean, I'm living now in Santa Fe, which is very dry. I've been here 1 year. I haven't met a fly yet. I met a few ants in my past house. I never met a rat or a mouse or a cockroach. I never met, a few raccoons, a couple of raccoons outside, and I've smelt the smelly ones. What are they called? What are those smelly animals called? The ones that really stink in America, on the West Coast. Can't think of their names.
Skunks.
Skunk, that's right. Exactly, skunks. I smelt a skunk once. Now, in my room here now, my new room in downtown Santa Fe, I met one baby spider snucking under the cupboard. Get out of my way, you know. I've not met another being yet. Not outside. It's the middle of summer. There's not a single creature. So this is environmental karmic result, aren't I fortunate, of my past non-killing. But we're resting on our laurels right now. So if you're sitting there in Leeds, you don't meet many flies in Leeds as well. That means because of your past non-killing, you're living in a very peaceful environment. Don't just think you're lucky. You created that from your past non-killing such that the environment is not harming you, or you're not being attacked by beings, you know. But we think, oh, aren't I lucky? No, you're not lucky, but don't waste it. So the tragedy is that every second you're sitting here not killing, because your mind is not deciding not to kill, because your mind is not intending not to kill, because intention, I will, is the main factor that needs to be in place when we do an action. I'm sure we discussed this last week. In other words, you could, you know, Tim and I could both have a mouse in our kitchen. There's 4 things in place, we discussed this, that need to be in place in order for us to create what's called a complete action. And the 4 things in place, in order for it to qualify as a complete action of killing, which means it drops a seed in our main bank vault, which means it will ripen in the future as a suffering rebirth. In order for a complete action of non-killing, the first one, there needs to be a living being there. So in both of our cases, we have a living mouse. Number 2 is our mind involved in it, and this is the most important. And there's 2 parts. There's more really, but this is keeping it simple. There's intention. I will kill the mouse. That's intention. And then motivation, that is the part of you that impels you to do it. So in my case, let's say it's anger. So intention, I will kill the mouse. Why? Anger. 3, I do the action. 4, result, a dead mouse. Now Tim, exactly the same, but the piece that's missing is number 2. He doesn't see the mouse, so there can't be an intention. He doesn't have, therefore, if there's no intention, he can't have a motivation. But his foot goes on the mouse and the mouse dies. For him, you could argue practically 0 karma. For me, because my mind was involved, heavy-duty negative karma. Exactly the same for a virtuous action. There's Tim and I walking down the street, and there's an action of generosity is called a virtuous action, okay? Now, both are the same of us. In front of us is a homeless person. The object is there, the first of the 4, an object, a living being, in this case, a poor person. 2, our mind involved in it. Now, Tim has the intention, and he goes, I will give £5. And then motivation, generosity. 3, he puts his hand in the pocket, and 4, the person gets £5. That's a complete action of generosity, which is a virtuous action. So the karmic seed goes into his mind, and it's a complete karmic seed of generosity, and it will grow and grow, and one of those will ripen in the future, and it could be the cause of his human rebirth, something like that, or a good result. Now me, exactly the same, a homeless person, but I have no intention to give, and I have therefore no motivation. But £5 falls out, £5 falls out of my pocket, and the homeless person gets the result. So 1, 3, and 4 are there, but I had no intention to give, and I might even have thought, who's going to give to that smelly homeless person? Not me. So not only did I not create virtuous karma, I created negative karma, because the mind is the main player. The mind is what colors and causes the action to be what it becomes, you know. So here we are sitting being nice people, but we're not intending to kill. The rats and roaches are happy, but we create 0 virtuous karma. So we're wasting our precious human life, resting on our laurels. So what to do? Live in vows. This is the difference. As Lama Zopa says, quoting from Buddha's teachings, Buddha loves his vows. They are so potent. Like I said, first of all, even it's said to be a subtle physical energy, because there you are sitting in front of somebody who represents the Buddha for you. You decide from now, you repeat after the person, from this moment till the time of my death, I will never kill. I will never lie. I will never steal, etc., etc. And that is it kind of engraves in your mind stream this intention. That's the vow. And so, as Lama Zopa says, 24 hours a day that you're keeping that vow without even thinking about it, without even a motivation, while you're asleep, 24 hours a day, you're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds into your main non-killing bank vault. And not only that, because of the power of vows, you're putting atomic bombs under the habit to kill. So just to be nice people, the Lama Zopa says, is not enough. This is why they talk about the Buddhist vows. I mean, you can have your own personal vow, but this is a Buddhist analysis, and the reason why you plug in to have it with a person in front of you who represents the Buddha, who tracks it back in this power source all the way back, unbroken chain of human beings back to the time of the Buddha. So vows is like a no-brainer, you know. You'd be nutty not to do it. It's like a simple tool to use that can help us purify negative karma and produce bucket loads of positive karma. That's the idea. It's like enormous fertilizer. That's the power of vows. So now I need you to ask me some questions. I haven't stopped for an hour and a half. In fact, it's time to go home, for God Almighty's sake. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Better have time for questions.
We've got till 8 o'clock.
Oh, have we? Oh, okay, that's good. Okay, go on. Sorry. Good, talk to me. Questions. Please ask me questions now.
I have a question.
Good on you, Tim.
Vows. For a vow, let's say, to lie, most of the time I don't, but I can't guarantee that in some situation in the future I might not. So is it better to have the vow and know that occasionally I might break it, or not have the vow and avoid the karma of breaking the vow?
Well, that's like saying, you know, I don't think I'm ready to prepare to never eat sugar, knowing that I could die and get diabetes and die. I don't know that I might not just eat sugar one day. So is it better to make a strong decision to watch my mind like a hawk and never eat sugar? Is it better to do that than just to sort of sit there and be weak and pathetic and say, oh, I might do it in the future? Who's in charge of your mind, baby Tim? It's a no-brainer. Come on, baby. It's like you're like saying, oh, I better not commit myself to drive a car, because what if I crash one day? Nobody ever says that. You've got to learn to be in charge and see the benefits of programming your mind in the wish not to kill, the stupendous benefit having it there, helping you programming your mind in not killing, and know the marvelous benefits for yourself. You be prepared to do it. And that's why now the purification process, which is the next one we can talk about, where you really dig it even deeper in your mind. You've got to be grown-ups, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on, anybody else? You've got to see the benefits. If there's no benefit, Tim, don't do it. If it's just to be a good boy, that's ridiculous. You've got to really understand the benefits, you know, which is your happiness, which is your programming your mind in virtue, and you're purifying your rubbish habits. When you know that, you're prepared to do the hard work, you know. Isn't it? Who else, people?
So Paul's got his virtual hand there.
Okay, good, Paul. Go for me. Talk to me, darling.
Hi, I was wondering, I had a question about karmic seeds being in this vault that you've described.
Yeah, I mean,
and if there are,
yeah,
as the analogy, yeah.
Yes.
Are there particular conditions in which a karmic seed would ripen? Are there particular ways that we can put ourselves in places where this will happen, the good ones and the bad
I mean, it
ones,
really is, yes,
to come to fruition?
No, it is. I mean, this is why Buddha and all the subsequent, you know, masters always use the analogy of seeds and fruits, you know, that, yeah, so basically, I mean, you have to use analogies because mind isn't physical. It's really hard to talk about something that's not physical. So you've got to use verbs and nouns that kind of we can use as graphic examples of things, as analogies, you know. So, first of all, when you study Buddhist philosophy in more depth, you learn in depth about the different kinds of causes. There are main causes, substantial causes, direct causes, indirect causes. There are many things. And you can talk in this way exactly like growing a flower, you know. You need you've got to identify the main cause of a rose, and it has to be a rose seed. So the main cause of a moment of happiness, this is the Buddhist way of talking, the main cause of a moment of happiness, which means a moment of a good feeling. Happiness is a word that refers fundamentally to a pleasant feeling. It can be very pleasant or mildly pleasant, and it can be, obviously, that's the key meaning of the word happiness. But we can see it can either simply arise in the mind, you feel a moment of joy, or it's triggered by certain conditions. So, you know, let's say you're my boyfriend, and you smile at me. Well, that's a really, I wouldn't be feeling the moment, because we've got so much attachment. I don't believe I can have any happy feelings unless you smile at me. So that's why I've got attachment to manipulate you to smile at me so I can have a pleasant feeling. So the pleasant feeling is in fact the fruit of my past virtue. But because I don't know how to access it my own way, I need you to smile at me. So I mean, I won't get angry unless you're mean to me. So our trouble is, so these are the secondary conditions. For the Buddha, my own unhappiness is the result of a past negative action of mine, but it was triggered by your unkind words. My moment of happiness is the fruit of my past virtue. The main cause of my moment of happiness is my past virtue, but it's triggered by your pleasant action. So of course the wrong view we have got, Buddha says, is that I believe your action is the main cause of my happy feeling. So karma ripens in this simple way. We meet certain conditions like the rose does. The rose seed is the main cause of the rose, but you can hold the rose seed up in the sky for 42 years. You will never get a rose. It needs the external conditions to nourish it. So karma is very much like that. You could have the karma to kill, but if you never meet the particular people you've got karma to kill, for who have killed you in 22 past lives, if you never meet them in this life, that karma will never ripen. So it's like that, the way they talk about it. There's the main cause, which is your past action, and then the conditions that trigger it. So one of the ways was why we have to purify the actions, but also give ourselves the appropriate conditions. Like if you know very well, if you've got a tendency to be attached to alcohol, you know perfectly well that, you can't be expected to give up attachment to alcohol while you continue to drink it. You've got to remove yourself from the condition so it doesn't trigger your attachment. That's why it's crucial. First level of practice is not kill, not steal, not lie, not jump on the wrong partner. But if you've got a strong attachment to jumping on every boy or girl you meet, you better get out of the way of them, because it's too much for you to resist. So we need to recognize our tendencies and give ourselves the appropriate conditions to either enhance the virtue or to weaken the non-virtue. So we've got to be very intelligent about it. Does this make sense?
Absolute sense. That's
Good.
So clear. Thank you.
Okay, good. Well done, Paul. Good. Thank you. Who else? Anybody else there, Tim? No questions in the chat box? Oh, there's Catherine. Talk to me, Catherine.
Catherine and Alona.
Good. Catherine. Talk, Catherine. Unmute yourself, sweetheart. Catherine.
Sorry.
There we go.
Now
you've done.
Thank you very much for your teachings.
Good.
The issue of killing, for most of us in the West, not killing humans is not very difficult at all.
Right, exactly.
We're very fortunate in that way. So
That's
taking a lay vow not to kill humans is not challenging.
Exactly.
But I've heard you say in the past that His Holiness, when he is preceptor for lay vows, he specifies that it's not killing humans.
That's right. He only says that mostly.
Yeah, and I just wondered why he does that.
Yeah.
Because in Lama Tsongkhapa is pretty kind of hard line about about all the kind of non-virtues.
Of course.
And also when it comes to sexual misconduct as well.
Exactly.
It's much harder line than a lot of us in the West are kind of comfortable with, actually.
That's right.
And so many teachers, yourself included, are much kinder and gentler when it comes to the vows. But I just wondered about this killing non-humans versus...
Exactly. Well, I mean, first of all, it seems to be Buddha's teaching that all sentient beings go from life to life to life, from realm to realm to realm, and every single sentient being has been my mother, and every single sentient being is a human countless times, and we've been rats countless times, and dogs countless times, and one of the main causes of our suffering is our having killed each other. So, of course, the fundamental one, because Buddha would assert that all sentient beings want to be happy, as opposed to the Christian teaching, and it's very clear that God made all the other creatures for our benefit. He made animals for our benefit, So then it's considered virtue to kill an animal and eat it because God gave us those. So that's a very different teaching. The Buddha's observation is very clearly quite different. So of course the classic Buddhist law, of course, is don't kill any living being. So His Holiness is obvious why he doesn't give the complete vow, because he can know 99% of maybe Westerners, modern especially Westerners, for whom killing the roaches and the rats and so many creatures is utterly normal. It's normal in our religions and it's normal in our science. So it's quite shocking to hear that you wouldn't kill a cockroach. It's almost too shocking to bear. So His Holiness in his enormous kindness, and because he has permission to do that. I mean, Lama Zopa has given me permission to give lay vows and refuge, but I have no permission to change the vows. That's insane. So I give it as it's given. You know, don't kill any being. But His Holiness, out of incredible kindness to us, he says, at least if you vow not to kill humans, the power of the vow is there, and that's already a stupendous benefit for the person. And then to begin at least to think about not killing the others, you know, is just, but that's His Holiness is able to do that. And always the other example as well. The fifth vow is no alcohol, no intoxicants. And the logic is because vows, you're trying to subdue your body and speech so that you can subdue your mind. So of course, they always talk about alcohol, from which many problems arise. You know, they always talk like that. So it's very evident. You go berserk when you're drunk or stoned out of your brain on some weird substance. I remember myself. You've got no control over your senses, and you can do the most shocking things. We know that. So it does make sense. But a lot of people, His Holiness always quotes the precedent of this one old Kampa who was taking refuge in the 5 lay vows from Ling Rinpoche. His Holiness, you know, Ling Rinpoche, Dalai Lama's root guru, and one of Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe's main gurus, and mine as well. And Ling Rinpoche, and then the old Kampa, when he heard he couldn't drink it all, he said, oh no, I can't do that. I can't give up my chung. His fermented barley, whatever it's called. So Ling Rinpoche was so kind, and he said, that's okay, just don't get drunk. So His Holiness gives the vow like that. Now, I can't give it that way. I give it the way I've been given it, which is to not have anything. But with the lay vows, as you know, you don't have to take all 5. But I think the real thing is to see the benefit of making and this is the point to Tim, once you program your mind with the intention and have the courage to say, I will do everything in my power not to kill every cockroach, rat, dog and thing. And then we understand, Catherine, when we go into more depth, and maybe today we can't do it, it's got to be next week, I think, purification. When we start to see the power of purification, if we have the courage to say, I am in charge and I do not want the karmic results of killing, so I am going to do everything in my power to intend to watch myself like a hawk, and whenever I meet a cockroach or a rat or an ant, I will not try to kill it. This is already programming you in the thought when that you do meet it, you won't kill it. So we realize, and then we realize we can purify these tendencies to the point where you won't even have to meet a cockroach where you'll think you'll be forced to kill it. That's how powerful karma is. It's dependent arising. It changes the very dynamic of what even happens in your life, you know. So we've got to have a lot of courage, but it's logic if we can think about it. Does it make sense, Catherine, what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Thank you. Thank you so much, darling. Thank you. Who else was there? Alona had it. Yes, Alona, talk to me.
Hello, Venerable. Yes. Thank you for your teaching.
Good.
I have a question. I work in the same place for 11 years, and there is that I have a lady co-worker, and every time I have any contact with her, I have so much aversion, and I've tried so many different things to work with my mind and see what it is, and I can let go for a while, but it is so strong, and every time I see her or hear her, I have this aversion comes inside.
Okay, so then,
and of course, so I have I want to. What can I do?
Well, so okay, then what do you? Tell me what you do. Tell me what you do.
Well,
tell me how you understand. Tell me how you understand it, and then tell me what you do with it.
I thought I do this in
how do you understand it first? How do you understand the causes of it first? How do you understand it karmically? Why do you think it's like this?
Well, because I've done this to her, and now she's in this life, and she talks about me behind my back, you know, like and gossiping and all that, and I don't like that, and I know that. So when I complain about her, so we have
stop for a second, Alona. So first of all, you said before that you have aversion for her. Now you're also saying that she's mad, she's angry at you. She talks about you. She doesn't like you as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so you're also saying that you talk about her behind her back, do you?
Yes. When
you criticize her to other people, do you?
Huh?
You criticize her to other people.
I did, yeah.
You do?
Not anymore.
Okay, good. So then you've done the first level of practice. Junior school, you've controlled your speech. You stop saying the words. Already you are practicing a loner. And then second, when you see her or think about her, aversion arises in your mind. So you are working on it, right? You are trying to understand it and not buy into it. Well, then what more do you want? You're doing everything you can. You just have to be more patient and humble. And one day she will appear different to you. You just have to keep purifying. And then third, when you do your purification practice, when you do regret, which we're going to discuss next week, I regret whatever I did to this woman in 47 lives ago, or whatever it is, which is the cause right now of why she is harming me, why she badmouths me, why she doesn't like me. You take responsibility. You deeply regret specifically the actions you've done to her. And then the second step, you have compassion for her. And then the third step, you imagine purifying that karma. And the fourth step, you vow never to do it again. You are also then putting atomic bombs under the karma, and soon it will appear very, very differently. So just keep practicing, girl. I mean, you're doing perfectly.
I'm trying to do this in my purification practice at night.
What do you mean you're trying? Sorry, stop, stop, Alona. Alona, stop. What do you mean trying? You are doing it, right?
I'm doing it.
Well, then be content. Sorry. So then the question from that. No more questions.
There's no question.
That's right. So be patient and be humble, and then be grateful you got this woman in front of you who shows you that you've still got anger. So thank her for her kindness in your heart. All right?
Yeah.
Thank you, dear. You're doing great. I admire your practice. Anybody else? Who else is there? Somebody else? Time to go home soon. No, 10 minutes, 9 minutes. Any other questions? Of any kind. We can start talking about purification now, but I think we should finish on this one. Let's just talk more about vows. Well, to understand that. Huh? Who is there?
I have a question.
I'm trying to see which eye. Wait a minute. I want to identify which eye it is. Hang on. I'd like to see your face. Tim. Oh, Tim. Okay, go. Go, baby.
Hi. If you haven't got someone around to take the vows from,
yep,
can you make a promise to the Buddha, something like that?
What do you mean you haven't got anybody around? You don't know anybody who can give you the vows?
Well, I mean, I'm lucky because I've had the vows from you in the past. But
okay.
If there wasn't a teacher there,
right? No, you can, of course you can do this, but of course you can do this. But all we're doing here is talking about the very specific benefits of the way Buddha describes taking the vow from a person in front of you who is the Buddha for you. That's part of the power of it. And these days with Zoom, many of the lamas now give permission for this. Even His Holiness is giving bodhisattva vows. He's even giving empowerments on Zoom. So it's miraculous these days. But of course you can do it yourself. But the power of it is said to be, in this particular approach, plugging into this power source, tracking back to the Buddha through this chain of human beings. There's said to be some big, very big, powerful benefit in that. Do you understand? Yes, Tim.
Thank you very
much.
Good,
Tim. Yes, good. What else, people?
Kamla from London has a question.
Good. Come on then.
Hi, Venerable.
Cam, hi, darling. Talk to me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
That's a bit better, okay? Yes, a bit better, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Venerable. My question is, how can we think about discrimination against certain groups in the context of karma, like racism, sexism?
You know, you mean from the point of view of the person who does it, or the point of view of being the recipient?
Well, I guess in terms of like, I'm trying to think through collective karma. So I guess my question is, have those individuals created similar karma at different times?
Yeah, of course. There's just no question.
At the same time.
Absolutely, there's no question. You see, Cam, this is the key one. Of the four ways that karma ripens, again, the first is the type of rebirth. Second is your own tendencies. But the third one is the one that's the really powerful one. This is called experiences similar to the cause. These words tell us exactly. So because we are totally social beings, right, we live necessarily in relation to other beings. We are born from a mummy. We need daddy's sperm. We meet babies and siblings and aunties and rats and roaches and uncles and next door neighbors. And then throughout our life, look at it. Throughout our life, we connect with other beings. And if you think of it really simply, we could divide all of our experiences in relation to other beings into two categories. Those that are pleasant experiences, where people have been nice to us, who like us, who are kind to us, give to us, love us, blah, blah, blah. And the ones who don't like us, who dislike us, who hate us, who criticize us, who harm us, brutalize us, rape us, don't believe our words, lie to us, don't give us credit at the bank. Analyze it. It's almost so simple, it's embarrassing. So every millisecond of what is called happy experience is from past actions like that. And karma is pretty personal karma. So this is on a personal level. Everybody's got individual karma, but it also happens to be, honey, we do things in groups. I mean, everybody is a group. A family is a group. A country is a group. Male people are in groups. You know, bald boys are groups. I mean, there's always a group, because we analyze everything. There you go. Analyze everybody into groups. So, of course, when it comes to group karma, then so if you look at if you're in a group that wherever you might be, let's say it's in Africa 2,000 years ago, and you're born, like even born as an albino, you're considered this outcast, this weird, bizarre white person, you know, that you're born due to karma. The white and the black have got nothing to do with it. That's incidental, and it's conventional, and it's a karmic thing in this moment in time, that you're born with pale skin in a group of people who are all black, so you're considered weird, you're an outcast, you're criticized. Then white or black is incidental. Girl or boy, having a penis or a vagina, calling yourself binary or non-binary or whatever the terms are now. I've lost track of them all. I'm not being rude. Whatever it is, a group that we identify with, if that group is seen as down by another group, then that's due to arrogance in the past. If you're born in a group that's considered the high group, if everybody in one country is born with 3 legs, then 2-legged people are weird. So it's also, karma's really kind of conventional and very relative, but we get so stuck on the label homosexual, this one, or whatever the labels are, and then if we at a particular time, I mean a particular time now, you can see being a homosexual person in a particular group now is considered really wonderful. 50 years ago, you would have been put in prison. We know this. So it's the external one, the label, the white, the black, the male, the female, that's almost incidental. It's the way we're treated will tell us the karma we created. So you could be, you know, Donald Trump, who's considered by one bunch of millions of people to be a holy being. God has sent him on the earth to save us. That's what some people believe. They believe every word the man says. So from some people, he's like this karmic appearance of beauty and perfection. Another group of millions of people think he's a maniac and insane. So it's just so relative. It's so due to the karma you got with particular people, you're seen in a certain way. But of course, this is hard because we hear it as blame. So if you're born a black person in 1920s America and you're hanged from a tree, and then you're told that you caused it, it's too unbearable for us to hear this, because we hear it as blame and punishment. Do you understand? So we've got to get almost past the labels. However, whatever it is we identify ourselves as now, male, female, black, white, bi-binary, whatever it might be, it's how we feel and how we're seen by others. That tells us the karma we've created. Does that make sense or not? Is that answering your point?
Makes sense. I guess my question. So to follow up from that. Does it necessarily follow that the group created that karma at the same time?
Well, of course, it plants, you know, a seed.
The individuals have created the
sweetheart. This is why sorry, I'm jumping in. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Say your sentence again. I'm so sorry. I jumped in.
So is it possible that different people created the karma at different times in the past, and it just happens to be ripening at the same time now? Is the question.
This is why I think this is how we get back to the logic of seeds and fruits. You know that if you understand the law of botany, it will always explain why things happen logically. Do you accept that? There can't be random. Yes. There's logic to it. So what's missing is our knowledge of that logic. Well, karma is a natural law. No one runs it. It's not being pushed by anybody, and it's a natural law. So that it has to be coherent and it has to be logical. So put it that way. So then the job is to learn the logic of it. So the logic is it has to be logical. If it ripens at that time, it's because that amount of those conditions ripen at that moment. And certainly with groups, it has to. I mean, it can't be random that 100 people together die on an airplane. They all never knew each other in this life, but it's logical to deduce they've done a similar action at a similar time, such that they now come together in a seemingly random group and experience the result. It has to be. together. It's logical. So the key broad point is, like with botany or engineering or numbers or anything, we know that they're coherent, consistently logical laws. There can't be random. And if we think there is, it's because we don't understand the law. Karma, it has to be like that. Do you understand?
Yes. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Good, Carmen.
Venerable.
All right, Tom. Well, that's time to go home unless there's more burning questions. Are there more questions for today? No, that's it. Kerry, is it in the chat? Good, Maggie.
There's nothing in the chat.
Maggie's there. Maggie, you got your... Do you want to say something, Maggie? Oh, no, nothing. Okay. Yes, we can go a bit longer. It's up to you because I cheated you of 10 minutes. Are there any other questions?
We have a vow to set for practice at next.
Oh, you got to go then. Okay, so I'm sorry I'm late, but we covered plenty of information. And so I try and remember, we've talked about, I'll remember for myself now, you should remember, we've covered the general points about karma, again gone a bit deeper about the logic of it, tried to look into the power of vows a little bit. We'll go into more details next week, and we'll go into more detail about purification. And why these two are the most potent, tasty, delicious practices, such that if you live your life like this, you can guarantee, because of the logic of karma, that you will die a happy death, and guarantee you'll get a really good human birth and get really good conditions and have nice mummy and nice natty and nice health and nice things and plenty of money in the bank because you've created generosity so that you can continue practicing on your spiritual path. Karma is logical. Karma takes care, as Lama Yoshi says. So be delighted. If you're going to drop dead tonight, be very happy. Okay? Thank you, people. Jangchub. Semchog Rinpoche, Makye Panam Ke Guchi, Ke Panyam Pa Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne Gondu Paba Shogun. That's it, people. Thank you, darling ones. Very kind. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. And I won't be late, I promise. Bye, darlings.
Thank you.